Вітаю вас, я Антоніна Антоша.
Good afternoon, I'm Antonina Antosha, and you're watching UATV. We are working in Toronto, Canada, where the conference is going on. The conference is dedicated to the reforms which are underway in Ukraine. UATV channel, together with the Agri Team Canada, is launching a special series of interviews which are dedicated to the situation in which the reforms that Ukraine found themselves. And today we are going to discuss the reform in the media area. And Artem, the State Secretary of the Ministry of Information Policy of Ukraine. Welcome to our studios. Thank you. Hello.
Our team has come here to transform a post-Soviet state-owned broadcaster into a modern public broadcasting company to make it important and valuable for the society. We will deactivate toxic information in Ukraine, independent public broadcasting for every Ukrainian. This is Suspil. During the last 2 years, we relaunched and rebooted main TV and radio channels. We optimized the stuff by having cut down about 3,000 employees. We are building new studios, a modern high-technology news house. The ratings have raised. We are gradually expanding our channel's audiences by attracting younger viewers and listeners. We've created digital platforms. Hot autumn is waiting for us. By the way, autumn in Kyiv is very beautiful. Welcome. Welcome to the independent media company of Ukraine. We will make Ukrainian informational space vivid and bright. Suspilne is a part of you.
Отже, пане Артеме, знову вітаю.
Mr. Artem, I would like to welcome to our studio. The reforms in the media area is one of the most important, and I'm not exaggerating it, because the media units are the most important source of providing information to the Ukrainian public. And how does the ministry cope with this task? The key issue is the following. The ministry has not done one thing, and we did not become the Minister of Censorship. When we were created, everybody thought that we will be either the Ministry of Censorship or Corruption, but the ministry has never had a goal like that. The key task which we saw in front of ourselves is the development of independent media, support of the independent media, and development of the media conscious in Ukraine. And a lot has been done in this area, and we have to do even more. And everything which depends on us, and everything which in the scope of our terms of reference is support of the media in the areas which are close to the border, because they are the highest risk for the population. These are the areas where the population gets disinformation, when they get the false information about Ukraine. And this is where the Ukrainian media product is very scarce. I don't mean Ukrainian language product, but Ukrainian product. The other direction of our work is development of international television, and your channel, and this is not a channel, it's a multimedia platform, and it's very important to discuss the messages to the rest of the world. During these 4 years, we have created a lot to create the basis for support of the media, development of the media conscious, and also to give a message to the world what Ukraine is, what Ukraine now is, and what should it be in the future. You were saying about the broadcasting at the areas close to the border, and we face an issue, and there are very few media units which broadcast in the areas which are not under control at present of the Ukrainian government. We are talking about the areas where the pressure of Russia is very high. That's the west of Ukraine, and a media platform could broadcast at the territory of the anti-terrorist operation. Why there is only one source? Well, there are other channels and radio stations which broadcast to these areas, but the state cannot have an influence on the commercial channels. This is their own decision, and they take decisions that take into account technical possibilities and the number of audience. So the first task we have to resolve the infrastructure. We have to develop the transmitters, and we have developed three sites in the east, and also we provided the transmitters, and we have introduced several channels. The state channel UATV has to provide a lot of broadcasting in the east of Ukraine and the areas close to the border. We have listened now and watched the video about the development of the Suspilne TV, which is technically owned by the state, but it has to be present everywhere. And it has to be supported by the UATV, because these are different approaches, different visions. We cannot consolidate them and we cannot compare them. We have to remember that also development of the radio broadcasting has to be developed, not only TV. And Suspilne has to demonstrate their strong position. Also publishing books, advertising, and extension of information in the forms of brochures and flyers. And this is what the ministry is doing at present. A lot is being disseminated in the gray zone, grain area, and also in the occupied areas. But we face quite a big problem. The commercial channels don't want to broadcast in those areas. What the ministry does to get them interested, it's not profitable for them from the commercial point of view, and the ministry cannot do anything about it. The Parliament of Ukraine has to create the laws which will provide the commercially profitable conditions for the commercial channels. We were talking many times about introducing some privileges or the price of the electricity to extend the signal, but without the parliament, the ministry cannot do that. Let's go back to Suspilne. The product which is developed in the reform of the media area, the media sphere, is it successful? I cannot comment this statement. I am not working on the media television content. My task is for the television channels, radio stations, newspapers and books should be disseminated in the areas where the Ukrainian product should be present. I cannot comment content. I have no right to do that, but I have to provide all the conditions to create this content and for the people to see it and hear it. You were talking about the, conscience of the people of Ukraine. So how are we going to develop it? It's a philosophical question. The state cannot develop the conscience. It's a global category of philosophical character. I will reword it, paraphrase it. How we can teach the Ukrainian viewer to properly analyze the information which they get and understand where it's fake and where are, true news. We can start from school, even from the kindergarten. It's education. And at present, the new educational programs are included in the new standard of the Ministry of Education. Now we need more teachers who will teach the children how can they disseminate, how they can understand which is the fake information and which is the correct information. And we have to train these teachers. We need 5 to 10 years to create a system of how to teach the children to live in this new information space. The other countries started this process much earlier, like Denmark, for example. They started to work on it since 60s and 70s. But now we only understood how important it is. We have to carry out educational programs. We are talking about the future generations of the Ukrainians. But what we do with the people of my age, from 25 to 40, how do we teach them? We won't be able to teach them within a short period of time. There are no recipes, there are no opportunities to do it because people really trust the mass media. And if these are not mass media, this will be just gossip. Some people have heard, for example, some gossip about the president in the tramway or a trolley bus, and people start believing it. So education is very important, which we have to start from the early years of childhood. But unfortunately now we cannot impose understanding. We have to explain. And the task of the government, in the wide sense of the word here, is to speak in one voice and give these official messages quickly. There are privileges, there are no privileges. There is an opportunity to get some permits, and there are no opportunities to get these permits. So there will be no grounds for disseminate fake news. And at present, all Ukrainian mass media at present are affected by the awful mechanism of the Kremlin propaganda. It's like an ominous cloud over us. But this, cloud is hovering not only over Ukraine, but all over the world. Brexit, American elections in the US. This is a result, to a great extent, of the Russian propaganda. There are a lot of solutions, and first of all, we have to cooperate in this area internationally. These programs have been developed at the level of the European community, NATO, and the mechanisms of counteraction of the television channels which disseminate information of Russian Federation. And the internal mechanisms, this will be self-regulatory mechanisms. We have to create the conditions to develop the efficient mechanism of self-regulation of the media environment. The channels, the journalists have to decide for themselves. They are not going to disseminate the information which is false. How we have to motivate the journalists not to write the articles to order. There is no recipe for that. First of all, we have to abide by the law on the transparency of the owners of the media and of financing of the media. If we can see that there are no dirty money which is invested into the channels, well, then we can let these channels exist. And then after that, there is a question for the journalists, the unions, the organizations which are implementing the standards for the journalist work. The state cannot do anything about it. You were saying that the problems, the mechanisms of propaganda, which is working all over the world from the Kremlin, is a problem of the whole world. And false information, which is disseminated by Russia, is broadcast all over the world, including the situation in Ukraine. So how we, from Ukraine, well, we're now in Toronto, but we are working in Ukraine, so how from Ukraine we can combat it, and how we can tell our international partners the fact that Russia is disseminating the false information, untrue information of things which happen in Ukraine. We have to speak one voice. All the government authorities have to speak one voice in a balanced manner, so that they have one position and it is offered by all the government authorities. And channels communication, we have the channel UATV. The more experts, the more representatives of the authorities are discussing the Ukrainian politics there and tell what's true, what's false, work with the international organizations in the sense that if you want to get the truth in Ukraine, take it from the official sources. And then it will be easier for us and more realistic to provide this information. And there is another great news. A new agency, Ukrinform. What's going to happen within the framework of the reform with the agency, Ukrinform? We are very proud of the fact that the State Information Agency, which provides information in 8 languages of the world, and it increases its audience, is one of the 5 all the media of Ukraine which are comply with the journalistic standards the most. And this is for the first time in Ukraine when the government has created the agency which complies with the international standards of the journalism. And this is key. And it is an example of how, without the censorship, without the pressure on the journalists, one can provide a honest information, clean information. It's a good example, including for the self-regulating agencies, for the media organizations, how the proper, fair policies, honest policies have been implemented. A lot has been done and a lot of big plans. Thank you very much for visiting our studio. Artem Bidenko, the State Secretary of the Ministry of Information Policy of Ukraine. Watch UATV, and we are working from our studio in Toronto, Canada, where the conference is going on. The conference which is dedicated to the reforms in Ukraine. See you soon.